So it's now been a year since WRC announced this Beyond Rally initiative, the idea of getting the next big female talent into the WRC. Let's have a look at how it's been going. We'll have a bit of a discussion about the timeline to recap. And we'll have a look at how each of the 15 people who made the shortlist have been getting on since that shortlist was announced. So, starting off, the timeline. Around the summer last year, the WRC announced it was opening applications. And then at the end of August, they announced the 15 finalists who, in September, went for a 3-day intensive course at M-Sport Poland in Kraków. From there, they selected 3 finalists, who faced off at the Central European Rally. When they couldn't decide which of the finalists they wanted to have as their final candidate, they narrowed it down to 2, who faced off in Sweden, where a winner was decided who got a fully funded drive for 2025 in the Junior World Rally Championship. And that's where we're at now. We are now halfway through the 2025 season, and we're about a year on since the announcement of these entries for the Beyond Rally programme. So, I think it's worth assessing now. Where are the 15 shortlisted candidates? So we'll start off with the drivers who got to the first round, got to the showdown, and I'll go in alphabetical order as well. Starting off, Hannah-Lisette Abner. The only start I could find for her was third in class in the Saaremaa Rally, an event in her native Estonia. But Abner's only 18 years old, one of the youngest of last year's cohort. I think she might actually be the youngest. Emma Chalvin, the 24-year-old has been competing in the native France this year, most rounds being part of the French Tarmac Cup. She's running in Clio Rally 5, and she currently sits second in the women's standings and 13th in the two-wheel drive class. But it is worth noting that Muriel Viduera, the leader in the women's class, who is also 10th in the two-wheel drive class, has been competing since 2018 and is driving an Alpine A110 Rally GT, so not the most equal of machinery compared to a Clio Rally 5. But Chalvin does have a championship under her belt, having won the ladies' class of the ADAC Opel E-Rally Cup at the CER last year when the finalists are going through their shootout. For Anne Velke, she's largely returned to the co-driver's seat since the shootout, continuing her work with Max Schumann, which started last year, and teaming up with Lucas Thiel for the IPA Rally as well. Alongside Schumann, they've picked up 2 overall wins in Germany and a further class win since the Beyond Rally phase programme finished. For Joanna Hassoun, the 21-year-old Lebanese driver has stepped up to four-wheel drive machinery last year. I think she got her first competitive taste for four-wheel drive machinery with that shootout with M-Sport's Fiesta Rally 3. She's made 6 starts this year in an MRF shod Evo 9, with all 3 of her finishes being on the class podium. She's also had 2 starts at continental level, with MERC starts on Rally Saudi Arabia, the candidate event for the finale of this year's WRC, and the Jordan Rally that uses former WRC roads. For Mako Hirakawa, the 28-year-old has continued competing in her native Japan with a Toyota Yaris, making some starts this year under the Toyota Gazoo Racing Japan banner with a GR branded Yaris. After ending 2024 with 5th in class on the WRC's Rally in Japan, she's currently second in the women's category of the Maritzo Challenge Cup, with a class win and a further class podium in BC3. For Hannah Jakobsen, the 21-year-old made a brief appearance last year at the WRC's CER alongside many of her fellow competitors for Beyond Rally. She was second in class for women's as a guest entry. But most of her competition has continued this year with the first generation Ford Fiesta R5 in a native Sweden, with an overall podium and a class win and won the rally sprints this year. She also made an appearance in the National Series event, running alongside the ERC's Royal Rally of Scandinavia a couple of months ago. For Nuria Pons, the 22-year-old has continued competing in her native Spain in a variety of N5 and first-generation R5 machinery. In this year's Spain Super Championship, she currently sits 26th with 12 points, but is leading both the N5 and the women's classes, and is also 4th in the junior class. But remember, where we're talking about all of these classes and we're talking about R5s, her R5 is a first-generation R5 Skoda Fabia. So, much like we've talked about when it comes to Jakobsen, it's not the most up-to-date machinery. It's a car that's, roughly about 10 years old. With Ether Raftery, possibly the most high-profile entry going into last year's selection event due to her Motorsport Ireland backing, The 24-year-old has picked up a lucrative Dirtfish partnership this year and has continued to compete in the ERC as a primary series. But she has also picked up more four-wheel drive experience, recently driving a Rally 3 Fiesta at Goodwood to complement multiple ARA starts aboard a Dirtfish-branded Hoosier Shod Subaru WRX STI. Her best finish at the ERC was arguably 4th in ERC4 and the Junior ERC in Poland, while she also did win the women's category in her sole Opel E-Rally Cup entry this year so far. For Luz Marina Santana, the 19-year-old has continued competing in her native Spain, with 2 appearances this year aboard a Fabia 1.2 TSI. With Madeleine Tabor, the 22-year-old member of the third generation of Tabor rallying in America, has stepped up from a production spec Impreza to a Fiesta Rally 3 in 2025. She's currently 15th in the standings, on the same points as her father, and picked up 2 class podiums in Snowdrift and the 7 Ohio, with top 5s in her class on her 2 other finishes, which were at, legendary events for the ARA calendar, the 100 Acre Wood and the Olympus Rally. For Alexandra Teslevan, the 18-year-old has continued competing in her native Romania in 2025, with 3 starts and 3 finishes so far this year aboard a 208 R2, helping her to lead the 208 only class, as well as 4th in the standings for the juniors on both asphalt and gravel, and the same for the 4-wheel drive on both of them. I think because of the leaders competing in one surface and not another, she sits 6th in the overall junior and front-wheel drive standings. But she does also sit 2nd in the R05 class. And for Dorka Zagiva, the 20-year-old Hungarian youngster has picked up a handful of starts with Fiesta Rally 3s in the past year, but her main competition has been in a PSZA Motorsport entered 208 Rally 4 in her native Hungary. While she retired from the ERC event in Rally Hungary earlier this year, she has won the under-25 class twice from her 3 starts in the Hungarian National Championship, and currently sits 5th in a 208 Cup with 2 podium finishes. Now let's talk about the finalists, starting with Suvi Jokinen. The Finn ended up getting to the CER last year, but was not selected to carry forth to Rally Sweden. The 25-year-old second-generation rally driver has continued to compete in her native Finland this year with the Co-Motorsport MRF Short Fiesta 1.6. So far, she's picked up 2 class podiums, with 4 classified events. And for Licia Baudet, who got to the second shootout in Sweden, the 22-year-old has not made a start this year that's been tracked on the EWRC results since Rally Sweden. But since this program was announced and since she got to the second phase of it, she did wrap up 2024 with a Ladies' Cup victory in her native Belgium, behind the wheel of a Clio Rally 5. Now, as for the inaugural Beyond Rally winner, Claire Schoenborn has competed in the JWRC this year, with a handful of other appearances to continue building up her rally experience, one of which was a 5th place in class at the pre-event shakedown, essentially, that was part of the TER, in a Fiesta Rally 3, entered by the Beyond Rally program and WRC promoter themselves. Now, her best finishes in the JWRC so far this year was 7th in the shootout in Sweden and 8th in the most recent start in the Acropolis, and that was despite having to Super Rally. Next up for her is going to be the second half of the JWRC season, continuing in Rally Finland in a few weeks' time. So then, what do we think about the successes of Beyond Rally? I think there has been a success, though I think the success has been somewhat limited. I think it's successful that Claire Schoenborn has been selected and will get this fully funded season. However, the thing that comes to mind for me is the Rally Star program. You see, the Rally Star program was basically get the esports people from the WRC game into a rally car. They selected 3 people for a 2-year JWRC campaign. And what happened? Robert Jurgensen went and from the outset won the JWRC. So he's in WRC2 this year, with the WRC promoter having funded the 6 of the 7 events, so that he could get a full complement, and if he wanted to do the drop round, he could find funding to get a drop round. But there were 3 people in that one. And that is where my concern lies. Because as far as I'm aware, Schönborn gets a JWRC ride this year. But I think it's only for this year. But I'm happy to be corrected if I am wrong about that. But I think the thing for me is, Rally Style got 3 people, and they had a build-up year getting into the JWRC. Whilst I get that we're talking about people who have impressive resumes, and some of whom have amazing potential outside of those resumes, I don't like the fact that there was only one person who was selected. I think when they got to a point where they were like, actually, we can't decide which person we're going to put forward, WRC promoter should have just gone, you know what, we'll give all 3 of them a fully paid ride for 2025. That's the least that we can do. Because I believe that if Suvi Jokinen got to the second round in Sweden, that she probably would have outperformed the other 2 competitors. And I also believe that Alicia Baudet would have had some good performances as well. But it's a problem that happens when it comes to women in motorsport more generally. Funding. And, I mean, we see it even worse in single-seaters, where the winner of F1 Academy doesn't really get the money to get up to F3. I mean, Abby Pulling's gone across to, GB3? Jamie Chadwick, who won the W Series and dominated the F1 Academy as well, she's in an LMP2. She did do some Indy Lights stuff and won a race in Indy Lights, but that ladder is so expensive. And especially, this is something that I talked about in my video about Pride Month in motorsports this year. With the way the world is currently going, it is so difficult to find the funding to put together for these programs with the angle of this is for a woman who is going to be competing in motorsport. Now, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it was still somewhat easier. But because brands are so worried about being decried as woke now, it happens less often compared to back then that you'll find a company, especially when you see so many people scrapping targets for getting women into visible places, that are willing to even use some of the marketing budget they're using to, say, offset their taxes, anything that's tax deductible, and put it into programs for women, or programs for women in motorsport more specifically in this situation. So the way that I see it, the WRC really should have done more with this. The WRC promoter really should have done more. Because Extreme E faded out, and Extreme H isn't here yet. And whilst there have been successes from that program, I would say that one of the greatest ones for that has been Cristina Gutierrez with the W2RC, or the likes of Clara Anderson with World RX. It's still been really tricky. And it does boggle my mind a little bit that there aren't brands who are willing to put the money behind it, to put a budget behind it so that these women can continue their programs. Because heck, in the 80s and 90s you could find specific manufacturers who were looking to put funding together to do it. Look at Proton, or look at the Simonites, or look at someone like Louise Aitken-Walker. Heck, when people who were champions like Ekaterina Stratina or Louise Cook are struggling to put the funding together to make a bid for a single event, I think that means that we've got a problem, doesn't it? Anyways, those are my thoughts and feelings and observations. Thanks so much for watching and joining, and thanks for listening to what has essentially been a bit of a rant by me towards the end of it. If you do have any thoughts or feelings, do let me know in the comment section down below if you agree or if you disagree. Let's get a discussion going about this. And would you like to see the WRC running a program like this again? For me, I did enjoy the Rally Star stuff, and I would love to see that one run again, but I think especially I would love to see Beyond Rally run again, and I would love to see Beyond Rally run again in a similar way to what Rally Star was. You know, pick 3 people, pick them from different places around the world, pick them from areas that don't tend to get WRC competitors, maybe. So you might find somebody out in, say, Indonesia, which has a strong rallying scene. It's got one of the Rally 1 dehybrided cars out there, but doesn't have the funding to go to the main series. I mean, this is where Sean Gallel's father was competing, for example. But thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon for more. Till then, it's bye for now.